Hello! So today's lesson is on biodiversity and using a diversity index. There is a calculation that happens partway through here, and what I'll do is, because this is a recording of the screen only, I will have to post a separate video underneath this which will just show you how to do the calculation and take you through step by step. But when I'm doing that, I'm actually going to be going through the example that's on this PowerPoint. So it would be a good idea for you to be able to sort of see both if it's possible, maybe one on your phone or one on your computer. Anyway, so biodiversity is this idea of when we look at an ecosystem. So an ecosystem is a mixture of all the vegetation and all the animal life living in a particular area. So that's our ecosystem. And how diverse our ecosystem is to do with a couple of things. How many different species are living in that ecosystem and all their different relationships with each other, i.e. predator, prey, etc. So it's how many of different species are there, but also we need to see how strongly each species are represented there. It'll make more sense as I go through. So there are two definitions we need to know. The first one is species richness. Okay, so one is species richness and the other one is species diversity. So species richness is very simply the number of species present in a specific area. It's not the number of individuals within a species, so it's just how many are there in a particular area. And then the other definition we need to know is species diversity. So the number of different species and the number of individuals of each species within a community. Okay, both of these are useful to know. Species diversity is probably a little bit more useful. I'll give you an example a little bit later on, just to show you why that's more relevant, really. So I've already said this, the higher the species diversity of an ecosystem, the better able it is at coping with environmental changes. So this is a fairly simple food web. You've probably seen this before at GCSE. We have the producer at the bottom here, so the oak tree. And these are all the things that this producer makes. And on here, from this bottom trophic level, we'll do more about this when we do topic 5, we have the primary consumers, the things that feed off that are usually herbivores, like so. And then we have the next organism that feeds off that, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers. Don't worry about these phrases, we'll do them when we do topic 5. But understand that this is the food for this organism, and this insect is the food for the toad, this organism here. And therefore, the more complicated this web is, let's say, for instance, that let's have a look. Let's say, for instance, that the rabbit dies out here. If that rabbit dies out, that's going to affect not only the wolf, but also the red fox. However, the wolf will probably be okay because the wolf eats a rabbit and it eats the red fox as well. So if there's no rabbit in the area, it'll go, I'll eat red fox instead. So it has an alternative, or it'll eat deer. However, the more simple a food chain is, the less likely there's an alternative if your food source runs out. So that's why ecosystems need to have a big species diversity. Okay, this is obviously a very complicated and very complex food web. So here you can see this has got lots of species in there. This has got a high level of species diversity. And if anything dies out here, it's okay because there'll be something else that the organism can eat. However, generally speaking, aquatic ecosystems are really, really quite fragile. They tend not to be food webs. They tend to be food chains where you've only got one thing feeding on another thing on another thing. So that's why our ecosystems, aquatic ecosystems, are in peril at the moment with all the plastic pollution and the rising temperature of the ocean. So it has a big impact. Okay, so let's have a look at diversity index and why this is species diversity index. So this is a measure, this is a calculation we can do, which will give us a number, and basically the higher the number that you get in this calculation, the more stable the ecosystem is. So to calculate it, you need two things: how many species are present, so species richness, and both of these two together give us species diversity. We need to know how many individuals of each species are present. Okay, and it's useful because it's giving us both things, how many species and how many individuals. Let me sort of explain why that's useful. So if you look at this example, we've got two habitats, X and Y. Okay, now if you look at it, they both have the same species richness. They've both got 5 different species. That's A, B, C, D, and E. They've both got 5 different species each. And the total number of individuals in this ecosystem, total, so not individuals of each species, total, everything that's there, they've both got 50. So if you just looked at that bit of data in red, these two habitats, you wouldn't be able to tell which one had a higher species diversity than the other one. However, if you look at habitat X, this is a very stable habitat because there is fairly large numbers of each species. No species dominating and nothing that's in low numbers, so it's in peril. However, look at habitat Y. If you can see in habitat Y, you've got species D absolutely dominates. There's loads of that particular species, and then there's hardly any of the other species. And therefore, this one will have a lower index of diversity or diversity index, okay? And this one's more in peril, Y compared to X. So how do we calculate it? This is the equation. So your answer is D, which you come out with at the end. So N refers to the total number of individuals of all the species in the area. So just add them all up, everything. And little n, so n and n minus 1. And then this funny symbol here is the sum of, and little n is the total number of each species in the area. Okay, the higher value you calculate it, the higher the species diversity is and the more safe that ecosystem is. Right, so this is the worked example. Obviously it's not worked at the moment. I'm going to do the next video you'll see underneath this has got the workings out of it, so you'll see it. Okay, the last little bit to talk about with you are the impact on two things. The first one is how agriculture affects species diversity, and then the second one is how deforestation affects species diversity. So agriculture generally reduces species diversity. There's lots of reasons for that. So firstly, well, I'll come back to selective breeding in a bit, but monoculture is one of those. Monoculture is, I've got a picture here, is the very top, that picture, is the idea that a farmer will grow the same crop over and over again in that same field. Now, if you compare that with the very bottom picture, this is a picture showing you a wild sort of meadow without any farming going on whatsoever. And as you can see, the top one, we've got one plant, which is one type of food source, which is only going to encourage one kind of animal organism to live there. Whereas this one down here has got lots and lots and lots of different plants. So that means a large variety of food sources and habitats, which is where organisms live. And therefore lots and lots of animal organisms will live here. So it'll have a higher species diversity compared to that top one. Other things that farmers do, they remove the hedgerows so that they can get their farming machinery in and do all the agricultural things that they do. And the removal of hedgerows, again, removes lots of different species of plants, which is going to cause, and I put it in red down here, a small variety of habitats and a smaller variety of food sources. So that means they're not going to be able to have as many animal species there, which is why that reduction in species diversity goes on. Okay, now selective breeding right at the top is the idea that farmers will breed animals together so that they can get favourable characteristics, and that reduces the genetic diversity of lots of animals, again having a bit of an impact. Okay, the last one we have to look at, I will set you something on this in a little bit, is the impact on deforestation on species diversity. So generally, normal wild forests have many layers. So therefore, again, it's the same thing as the thing before. So it's what I put in red. It provides a large variety of habitats and food sources. Now, be clear in your answers when I set you questions. You do not say that forests give us lots of habitats and lots of food, because those lots of habitats could all be the same habitats, which is only going to encourage the same species of animals. That will not increase diversity. So you have to say the word variety. All right. So if you go down to that sort of near the bottom one, it says loss of rainforests has the greatest effect on global biodiversity. The loss of any forest, but obviously definitely of tropical rainforest. So the idea is just going back to that top layer in red. By removing those, we are reducing the variety of habitats and food sources. Therefore, we will reduce the species diversity. If animals have got nowhere to live, if we remove their homes, then the species diversity will go down. So the diagram is just showing you, this is our normal to the left, a normal forest, where you can see you've got low-lying shrubs, you've got medium plants, you've got the much big taller trees. We've got layers, and organisms like to live at certain points. So we're going to have a hugely high species diversity in this one on the left. On the right, this is a farmed forest. So this is a rubber farm, and as you can see, we can tell it is because there's only ever one layer. There's no low-lying plants. They're trying to increase the amount of produce that this farm produces, this forest farm sort of thing. And therefore, with only having one layer and no lower layers, it reduces the variety of habitats and it reduces the variety of food sources. Okay, so in your questions, make sure you are using that word variety. Okay, it's not about the number of habitats, it's about the number of different habitats. It's not about the amount of food, it's about the amount of different types of food. Okay? Right, I'm going to do a video now and upload it of how to do the actual calculation so you know what you're doing. Thank you very much.